Gardens are deep, the fisherman and the genie. Come, Arabian Nights story. Part 1. The Old Fisherman and the Sea of Stars. Beneath the silver veil of the Arabian night, where stars lay scattered across the sky like spilled grains of salt, there lived a fisherman. He was old, not in the way of years, but in the way of the sea. His hands were shaped by the oars, his back curved by tides, his eyes bright with the reflections of 1,000 dawns. His boat was small, weathered by years of salt and sun, but it was his entire world. Each morning he set out into the wide embrace of the sea, and each evening he returned, carrying whatever fortune or disappointment the waves chose to give him. That night, as the moon climbed high and the sands cooled beneath the wind, the old fisherman rowed slowly along the coast. The sea was still, the kind of stillness that makes you feel the universe breathing. He dipped his net into the water and whispered a prayer, not loud, but with the quiet reverence of habit. By the mercy of Allah, may the sea remember me kindly tonight. The waves did not answer. They rarely did. He smiled faintly. "You are moody, old friend," he murmured to the sea, "but then again, so am I." The old man's name had long been forgotten by the city beyond the dunes. They called him the quiet fisherman, or simply the dreamer, for he spent more time speaking to the sea than to people. His hut, made of driftwood and stone, sat at the edge of the desert, where the sand met the tide, and every morning the footprints of crabs erased his own. There was peace in his solitude, but also loneliness. Loneliness that crept like mist into his bones when the night stretched too long. Still, he loved the ocean because it never judged his silence. That evening, as the stars began to shimmer brighter than candles, he cast his net once more and waited. The rhythm was old as the world itself. Cast, drift, wait. His boat rocked gently, the wooden hull creaking like an old friend telling secrets. Time passed, an hour perhaps, 2, before he pulled the net. It came up heavy, glistening in the moonlight. But when he peered inside, his heart sank. No fish, no silver scales or fluttering fins, only a weighty, strange object tangled in the ropes. A bottle. It was not like any bottle he had seen before. It was tall and made of burnished brass, sealed tightly with a heavy cap of lead. Strange markings like curling flames ran along its surface. Even in the moonlight, it seemed to glow faintly from within. The old man turned it in his hands. The metal was warm, warmer than the night. He tapped it lightly. It rang with a hollow, ancient tone. A merchant's treasure, he wondered aloud, or perhaps a relic of some forgotten time. He smiled, his eyes soft with hope. Maybe the sea remembers me kindly tonight. He placed the bottle in his lap and rowed slowly towards the shore, the waves whispering at his sides. When he reached land, the moon had already climbed to its highest place, round and pale as a pearl. The old man dragged his boat onto the sand, set the bottle beside the fire, and sat cross-legged before it. For a long while he simply stared at it. The flames danced across its surface, and in their flicker the strange symbols seemed to shift like living script. The old man chuckled to himself. "A curious thing," he murmured, "if only bottles could tell their stories." He leaned closer. There was something alive about it. A faint sound like the hum of trapped wind pulsed from inside. A message perhaps, or a spirit. He hesitated, his fingers hovering over the seal. He was old, yes, but not foolish. The world was full of wonders, and some of them best left sleeping. But yet curiosity, that eternal hunger of the human heart, whispered softly, "Open it." He took a breath, lifted the bottle carefully, and twisted the cap. It did not move. He tried again, harder this time. The metal screeched faintly, but held fast. Finally, muttering a prayer beneath his breath, he took the edge of his knife and pried it loose. The seal broke with a sound like a sigh. At once, a cold wind rushed from the bottle, extinguishing the fire. The sand swirled, the air trembled, and from the mouth of the bottle rose a column of smoke, thick, dark, and filled with strange blue light. The fisherman stumbled backward, eyes wide. The smoke grew higher, twisting and coiling until it touched the sky. Then slowly it began to take shape. A face, a torso, arms that could have reached the horizon. When the form finally solidified, the fisherman found himself staring at a being made of cloud and fire, eyes burning like suns, voice deeper than thunder. "I am free," he roared, his laughter shaking the dunes, "free from centuries of darkness." The fisherman fell to his knees, trembling. He had heard tales of spirits trapped by Solomon himself, sealed in bottles and cast into the sea, but he had never believed them. The genie stretched his arms, his body shimmering with mist and lightning. He looked down at the old man, small, fragile, trembling, and smiled a terrible smile. "Who has dared to summon me?" he thundered. The fisherman swallowed hard. "It was not summoning, my lord, only accident. I found your prison in my nets." The genie's laughter rolled across the dunes. "Then you are my liberator, and for that you shall receive your reward." The fisherman's eyes brightened. Reward? The genie leaned down, his face close enough that the fisherman could see galaxies swirling in his pupils. "Yes," he whispered, voice low as desert thunder. "Your reward is death." The fisherman froze. My death? But I set you free." The genie smiled, his teeth like flashes of lightning. "Know this, mortal, I am one of the spirits Solomon imprisoned. For centuries I vowed revenge. At first I swore to—" The bottle sat between the fisherman's palms, warm and heavy as a living heart. Moonlight slid over its curved sides, tracing the words etched there, lines that no scholar could read now, yet every line shimmered with meaning. He turned it once, twice, listening. Inside, silence pressed like a held breath. No cry, no voice, only the faintest whisper of air. "Forgive me, spirit," the old man murmured, "but anger without reason is like fire without wood. It burns only itself." He set the bottle on the sand and breathed with the rhythm of the waves. For a long time nothing moved. Then, from deep inside, a thud, another, and a sound like thunder muffled under water. The fisherman stepped back. A crack of blue light split the seal. Smoke began to seep again, thin, trembling, uncertain. The genie's voice, low and echoing, filled the night. "Old man, have mercy. The darkness is too deep." The fisherman folded his arms. "I gave you mercy, Safr, and you offered death. Tell me, what value has your freedom if it destroys the one who granted it?" The smoke swirled inside the bottle, forming a dim shape. 1,000 years alone makes a creature forget the taste of kindness. "Then learn again," the fisherman said softly. "Learn by waiting. Every sunrise that passes while you are trapped will remind you of the warmth you rejected." The genie's tone shifted, less rage, more sorrow. "You speak as though you were no mortal." The fisherman smiled, lines deepening around his eyes. "I am mortal, which is why I understand time better than you. It is the sea that taught me nothing stays angry forever." The smoke inside the bottle shimmered faintly. A long pause. Then the voice said, quieter than before, "If I promise peace, will you unseal me once more?" The fisherman bent closer. "Peace without truth is another lie." He knelt, drawing in the sand a circle and a single word, sabr, patience. "Until the dawn comes, you will rest. If your heart is still proud at sunrise, I will cast you back into the sea. But if it is humble, I will open the seal again." The bottle glowed faintly, as though the spirit breathed inside. "Very well, I will wait." The fisherman smiled, his tired hands steady once more. He placed the bottle beside the dying fire and whispered, "Then we shall both wait, friend. The night is long, but not without mercy." And the fisherman waited. Waited with the patience of the sea itself, as the moonlight cast its silver reflection on the brass bottle. Dawn gathered slowly over the sea. The horizon breathed a line of rose and gold, thin as a thread between worlds. The fisherman, wrapped in his rough cloak, had not slept. He simply listened to the pulse of waves, to his own heart, to the faint sigh that came from the bottle. When the first girl cried, he leaned closer. "Succor, do you still curse the world?" From within came a voice smaller than before. "I have cursed only myself." The old man nodded. "Good, then you are learning." He warmed his hands above the ashes of last night's fire. The bottle's surface glimmered in the growing light, and for the first time the fisherman noticed that the carved symbols were not merely marks, but verses, verses written in praise of patience. He traced them gently. "Perhaps even Solomon wished you to remember this," he said. The smoke stirred. "When I was young, I thought strength meant never bending. But in the darkness, I saw that the sea bends to every wind and still remains the sea." The fisherman smiled. "Then you have found wisdom enough to greet the sun." He lifted the bottle, holding it so the new light passed through the brass. It glowed like amber, alive from within. He said quietly, "Promise me one thing. Should I release you, you will use your power to mend what anger has broken." "By the light that burns through me," the genie replied, "I swear." The old man hesitated, just long enough to feel the wind change direction, then pulled away the lead seal. A breath of air escaped, soft as a sigh of relief. The smoke unfurled, spiraling upward, until the genie stood again beside him. But this time, the eyes held no fire, but only reflection, like moonlight on still water. He bowed low. "Old man, I have never been so small, nor so free." The old man inclined his head. "Freedom is smaller than pride, but it lasts longer." Succor looked toward the sea. "Where will you go now?" The fisherman shrugged. "Where I always go. To the waves. They are my companions." A silence passed between them, as gentle as sleep. Then the genie raised one hand. A mist of golden sparks fell into the surf, and from it rose a net woven of pure light. "Take this. It will bring what you need, but never more than you deserve." The fisherman smiled. "Then it will serve me perfectly." He watched as Succor turned into wind and light and vanished toward the horizon, leaving only the scent of salt and myrrh behind. The sea sighed. The bottle lay empty upon the sand, and the old fisherman, with patience in his heart, set his boat once more upon the shining water, each wave whispering the same promise: all that is bound will one day be set free, and all that rages will one day find its calm. The sun climbed higher, pouring liquid gold over the horizon. The fisherman mended his nets in silence, while the freed genie drifted above the waves, part smoke, part light, unsure where to rest. He circled once, twice, before settling beside the old man like a shadow returning to its source. "Why did you not fear me?" the genie asked quietly. The fisherman smiled without looking up. "Because I saw that your anger was only loneliness wearing a louder voice." The genie's great shoulders sagged. "I roared so long in darkness that I forgot how small the whisper could be." He lowered himself until his knees touched the sand, eyes fixed on the tide. "Would you hear my story, mortal? Perhaps then my rage will finish leaving me." The fisherman nodded. "Speak. The sea will keep your secrets." The genie's tale. "I was born when the first winds of creation met the first fire of the stars. We were a proud race, spirits without flesh, free as storms, brilliant as lightning. But pride turns quickly to hunger. We fought one another for dominion over the sky, and our thunder frightened the earth. Solomon, the wise king, called us before him. He said, 'The greatest power is to serve.' We laughed at him, so he bound the loudest among us in brass and silence until we learned the weight of our own words. I was one of the loudest. At first I counted days, then centuries. I cursed heaven, I cursed the sea, I cursed even the sand that pressed around my prison. And slowly, my curses became my only prayer." The genie paused, his voice fading to a whisper that trembled like a flame before wind. "When you pulled me out of the water, I wanted only to prove that nothing good could come from kindness. But you proved the opposite. You tricked me, yes, but your trick was mercy disguised as wit." The fisherman set down his net. "Then remember that mercy, Sakar. Carry it with you as a lantern. There will always be darkness enough to use it." The genie looked out over the glittering sea. "Perhaps this is why Solomon smiled as he sealed me. He knew that wrath is only the first chapter of repentance." The old man chuckled softly. "And repentance is the tide. It always comes back." They sat together, the mortal and the spirit, watching the waves fold and unfold like pages in a book that had no ending. Each wave erased the last, yet the sea was never empty. The promise. When noon light touched the dunes, the genie arose. He said, "Old man, before I go, ask for what you wish. Your patience has earned a favor, and this time it will be freely given." The fisherman thought for a long while. The gulls circled above them, calling softly. "I have food enough," he said at last. "What I need is not gold or power. Grant me this instead, that whenever pride blinds you again, you remember the taste of the morning wind and the hands of an old fisherman who chose not to hate." The genie bowed deeply. "You have asked for my heart to stay human. I will try." And with that, he became a column of shimmering light and vanished into the blue. Closing moment. The fisherman lifted his net once more and cast it wide. Water sparkled through its threads like falling stars. He whispered to the sea, "The world is large, but kindness makes it home." The waves answered with a sigh that sounded almost like contentment. The day passed quietly. The old fisherman sat beside his boat, patching a small tear in his net. Each knot he tied seemed to echo the lessons of the morning: patience, forgiveness, and the weight of words once spoken. Though the genie had gone, his presence still hung in the air, faint as the perfume of burned incense. Sometimes he heard a whisper, not of threat, but of memory, floating on the wind. "Wisdom," he murmured, "is not born from victory. It grows where mercy takes root." He leaned back, closing his eyes. The sea murmured its endless song, and the sky blazed gold before softening into rose. Night returned, gentle, deliberate, and with it came the calm that only old souls understand. As the stars began to bloom overhead, the fisherman spoke aloud, not to anyone, but to the sea, which had become his eternal listener. "You've heard my story, old friend," he said to the waves. "Now let me tell you one more. For the sea keeps all stories, and perhaps you will whisper this one to the moon." He rested his hands on his knees and began. "Long ago," he said softly, "in a land where the rivers ran clear as glass, there lived another fisherman, younger than I, but with the same hunger in his eyes. One morning he pulled from the river not fish, but a golden bird tangled in his net. Its wings were torn, its feathers dulled. It looked up to him and said, 'Kind fisherman, let me go, and I will grant you wisdom enough to fill 1,000 lives.' The young man was poor and weary. He thought, 'Wisdom does not buy bread.' Yet his heart trembled at the sound of the bird's voice. So he untangled the net and set it free." The old fisherman smiled as he told it, eyes glinting with reflected starlight. The bird fluttered its wings and said, "I will tell you 3 truths, for wisdom shared is better than gold hoarded." The first truth was this: never mourn what is lost before you know whether it was ever yours. The second: he who trusts without listening will drink from an empty cup. The third: True wisdom never shouts. It waits and is found only by those who whisper back. Then the golden bird flew away, its feathers scattering like sunlight across the water. The fisherman paused, letting the night absorb his words. At first, he continued, the young man laughed. He thought, I have been tricked. What use are riddles to a hungry man? But as the seasons passed, those words returned to him. When storms destroyed his nets, he remembered the first truth. When greedy men offered false friendship, he recalled the second. And when he grew old and the river no longer yielded much, he found peace in the third. He understood that to whisper to life is to love it, not to demand it from it. The fisherman's voice grew softer, slower, drifting like the tide. I think of that man often. Perhaps he was me in another time. Perhaps you were me, my restless sea. Either way, his story is mine now, and I give it back to the waves. The night deepened. The moon climbed calm and full, and the sea turned to molten silver. The fisherman lay down on the sand beside his boat. His eyes traced the constellations that once guided sailors through endless waters. He whispered, Sakhar, wherever the winds have carried you, may you remember the net that freed you. Somewhere beyond the horizon, a breeze rose, warm and scented faintly with myrrh. He smiled. Ah, he said, the sea remembers. Before sleep claimed him, he spoke one last thought to the night. Kindness is not a single act. It is a tide. It leaves, it returns, and it carries all souls who are willing to drift. The wind answered with a sigh, and the oud faded to silence. And that concluded The Fisherman and the Genie. The Fisherman and the Genie. Calm Arabian Nights Story. Part 5. The King and the Healer's Tale. The fisherman slept beside his fire. The sea breathed in, breathed out, like a living thing keeping watch. As he drifted between waking and dream, a new story unfolded inside his mind, softly as though the waves themselves were speaking. The dream begins. In his dream, he stood in a great marble hall. Lanterns swayed from tall columns, and their light glimmered on brass and silk. At the far end of the hall sat a king, his robe the color of night, his crown bright with stars. Beside him knelt a healer, an old man whose eyes were gentle as rain. The king spoke first, his voice weary. My body is strong, yet my heart is heavy. I have conquered lands, built palaces, but still I do not sleep. Every night shadows whisper that my crown is made of sorrow. The healer bowed low. Majesty, the remedy for your sleepless heart does not lie in herbs or gold. It lies in mercy. The king frowned. Mercy is for the weak. The healer smiled.
Then be weak once, my king, and see how strong it makes you. The Parable of the Sparrow. To teach the king, the healer told a parable. A sparrow once fell into the hands of a falcon. The falcon said, "I hunger, and you are small enough to satisfy me." The sparrow trembled and replied, "If you must eat, take me. But remember, one day you may need wings smaller than yours to guide you through the storm." The falcon laughed and released him. Days later, a storm rose over the desert. The falcon's great wings grew heavy with rain, and he fell toward the earth. The little sparrow flew beneath him, calling, "Follow my path." Together they found a hollow rock, where they waited until the skies cleared. The healer looked at the king. Even the powerful must one day follow the small. That is the first cure. The second cure. The king asked, "And the second?" The healer pointed towards the windows where the city slept. "Give without being seen. The eyes of gratitude can blind as easily as gold can tempt. Heal someone who can never repay you, and you will rest." That night, the king walked the dark streets disguised in a cloak. He found a beggar child crying beside a fountain. He gave the child bread and water and said nothing. When the child smiled, the king felt something within his chest loosen, like a knot untied after years. The third cure. Returning to his palace, the king asked, "What is the third cure, wise one?" The healer replied, "When you have given mercy and secrecy, forgive even the one who wounded you most. The heart cannot sleep while it guards old pain." The king thought of a traitor once dear to him, a friend who had stolen his trust. He called for his release and forgave him. That night, for the first time in many years, the king slept, deep and dreamless, as peaceful as a child beneath the sound of rain. The dream fades. As the fisherman listened within his dream, the marble hall dissolved into light. He heard the healer's voice whisper to him, "Remember, old one, every story heals two souls, the one who tells it and the one who listens." The light dimmed, the sea returned, and the fisherman awoke to the hush of dawn. The waves touched his feet like gentle hands. Closing moment. He gazed towards the horizon and murmured, "So, that is the genie's lesson? The king was soccer, and the healer was the sea itself." He smiled, folded his nets, and whispered, "And now I am healed enough to sleep." Morning unfolded like silk across the sea. Light poured gently over the water, not fierce or golden, but pale, like the memory of dawn rather than the dawn itself. The fisherman stood at the edge of the tide, his nets empty, his heart unburdened. He whispered, "The sea has taken what it wished, and returned what I needed." The wind answered by brushing his cheek with a cool touch of gratitude. He smiled and pushed his small boat into the waves once more. The calm voyage. The sea was quiet that day, so quiet that every oar stroke sounded like a heartbeat. The fisherman rowed without hurry, watching ripples scatter beneath the hull like silver threads. For the first time in a long while, he felt no hunger, no need, no fear. He said aloud, "Peace is not given by the world, it is made one forgiveness at a time." Above him, the clouds drifted slowly, and between them he thought he saw a shimmer, a faint shape moving through light and mist. A tall form with eyes like stars and hands like wind. The genie, Sakr, watching silently from the horizon. The fisherman raised a hand in greeting. The spirit bowed in return, and then dissolved into the morning sky. The gift of the sea. When the fisherman cast his net once more, it filled easily, not with jewels or gold, but with fish enough to feed his village for days. He smiled, shaking his head. He murmured, "The sea rewards not greed, but gratitude." He gave most of the catch away, to the widows near the dunes, to the children who waited barefoot on the shore. They thanked him, but he only laughed. "Thank the tide, I only carry what it gives." And that night, for the first time in years, he slept not beside his fire, but beneath the stars. The sea sang him to sleep, its waves rising and falling in perfect rhythm with his breath. The eternal quiet. The dream returned, soft, luminous. The healer stood beside him once more and whispered, "The tale is finished, but the peace continues." He looked down and saw the sea stretching endless, its surface smooth as glass. Every ripple reflected the stars above until he could no longer tell where heaven ended and water began. So this is what the genie meant by freedom, he thought. The healer's voice came again. You freed him, and he freed you. One mercy leads to another until all chains are gone. The fisherman smiled and closed his eyes. The sound of the sea became slower, softer, like the breath of someone deeply sleeping. Now the story becomes silence. You are the fisherman, your body resting on the calm of your own sea. The wind moves through you but does not disturb you. Each breath is a wave, each thought drifts away like foam. The night sky above holds every kindness you have ever given, shining back at you as stars. You are safe here. You are home. And the sea, ancient and endless, hums the same promise it whispered to the old fisherman. All storms end. all anger fades, the tide always returns. Breathe in, breathe out. Let the sea return to silence.